Hey there, this is Matt Miller from Ditch That Textbook, and what I've got for you today are 5 Google Drawings features that I bet you probably didn't know about already. And I love using Google Drawings. Google Drawings is kind of like your digital poster board or a big digital piece of paper, and it's really easy to pick up and start using because there's only a variety, just a very small variety of things that you can use to put on your Google Drawing. You can add text, shapes, images, and lines, and that's about it. And those icons are right there on the toolbar at the top of your screen. So there's really a pretty low learning curve for teachers and for students to start using this. And the potential for it in the classroom is huge. In fact, I've got several posts over at ditchthattextbook.com, and if you search for Google Drawings, you'll see all of these different ways that you can use it in the classroom. So let's dig into some of these features that I'll bet you probably didn't know about. And the first one has to do with lines. And when I say lines, it's not drawing lines or even little arrows, but some lines that you can use to line things up. So let's take a look at the screen, and we'll see that we've got a couple of different shapes here. And as you move the shapes around, you'll start to see some of these lines show up. And so the first type of line is this red one that helps you align your shapes. And the one in the middle obviously means that they're centered, and then you can line them up to either side. So those red lines are pretty useful. Now there's another line that you can use that makes sure that everything is in the same proportion. So notice that we've got 2 squares up here, but we've got a rectangle. And if we want to make this rectangle a little more like the squares, as we start to change the shape of it, notice that those blue lines all just popped up. Those show that everything is now the same height. And then if I move this over a little more, you'll notice that now everything is the same width. So using those blue lines to make sure that everything is pretty much similar is really pretty useful. Now watch this. There's a third type of line also, and it has to do with spacing. So after I just moved these 2 squares kind of together, notice that there's that amount of space. Now if I want to keep that spacing uniform between multiple things, watch this. As I drag this into place, there's that blue line. And it shows, now this shows that the spacing between them is even, and they're all centered horizontally. And so being able to do that keeps everything nice and lined up. So that's trick number 1. Feature number 1 has to do with the lines that you can use to make sure that everything is lined up. Number 2 has to do with inserting videos into Google Drawings. Now, if you notice under the insert menu, there is no video option. So we've got to do a little bit of a trick to make this happen. But if we're creating something in Google Drawings where people are going to be watching it on the screen, having an interactive video on it can be a pretty nice feature. So let's switch over to Google Slides instead. So if you open up a brand new Google Slides presentation, you will notice that there is insert video here. And so all you have to do is insert a video. This one happens to be one of my favorite TED Talks. It's Every Kid Needs a Champion from Rita Pearson. And so I can take this video, click on it, and then copy it. Just use Control-C. Switch back over to my Google Drawing and paste it using Control-V. And look, there's that video. Of course, you can't add a video through the insert menu, but if you copy one from a Google Slide presentation and you paste it in, then it works. And then you've got this interactive video right here. So all you have to do is just click on the play button and it fires right up. So adding videos to your Google Drawings is number 2. Number 3 is to insert diagrams. And so if we go to the insert menu, this is a newer feature, at least as of the time that I'm recording this, is you click on diagram. Now, one of my favorite ways of using Google Drawings is to create infographics, where you pull in text and images and shapes, and you blend in kind of the visual and the verbal all together. And what's nice about the diagrams is that it kind of sets you up to create your own infographic without a whole lot of effort, and it makes it look really nice. So let's look into these diagrams a little bit. We've got a grid here, hierarchy, timeline, process, relationship, and cycle. And I want to use a grid. So let's click on this and see the different options that we've got. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them right here. And what's neat about these is that you can change the color of them so that they all match. So if I want to make them all red, I just changed the color there. And you notice that there's 3 rows. If we change this to 5, now it's an even bigger grid, this kind of diagram. But I'm going to change this back to 3, and as soon as I click on it, it pops right over here into my drawing. And so I can move this around. I can even, let's try that again. I can even resize the whole thing so that it stretches the full width. Of course, that does change some of the formatting here. So I'm going to undo that. Now check this out. There's a neat little feature. This is kind of like a bonus feature here that doesn't count towards your 5. There's a neat little feature that lets you resize the canvas right from the screen like this. And if you look down in the bottom right corner, if you've never noticed this little thing, notice that it changes my cursor. If I click and drag that, now I can resize my canvas to be exactly the right size for that diagram. Pretty cool, right? And then I can even add more diagrams over. And so if I do that, notice that you have them in, this is kind of like in 3 separate pieces, but if I highlight all of it, move it over, and now it fits, and then again it's going to kind of change the dimensions a little bit, but now those are stacked on top of each other, and it's kind of making an impressive looking little infographic. So using those diagrams and then customizing them the way that you want can be really, really nice. All right, let's move on. Number 4 is to add a background, but you probably already knew about adding a background. So I'm going to show you a different kind of background that you can add. So we can go to background here, and you can click on gradient. Have you ever tried this before? If you click on gradient, you'll notice that there's a variety of these different colored gradient backgrounds. And if you click on one, now you've got a little bit of a different look than just a flat color. And so that's kind of a neat feature to be able to add in, is just that gradient background. Another one of those things where if you didn't click on it and didn't try it, you might not have realized it was there. And then number 5, and this is a big one for me, and that's to insert word art to use for your titles or your big image or your big text. And so for me, I know whenever I add text, especially over a busy background, sometimes it's hard to see that text. But if you use word art, there's a couple things you can do to make it a little bit more visible and make those words pop. And so if we type in word art, or if we click on word art, impressive headline, that's what we're going to have here. So if we drag this up here, Google Drawings treats this text a little bit more like an image and a little bit less like text. Of course, if you need to change the text, you can always double click on it and change it. And it says here, use Shift plus Enter for multiple lines. So if I hold in Shift and push Enter, it's going to put it onto 2 lines there. Okay, so we'll leave it the way that it is. And you can still change the text. My favorite font is Luckiest Guy, so we're going to change it to that. Now, once this is in here, you can actually use these little squares on the corners and on the bottom and the top and everything. You can use these to change the dimensions of your text without changing the font size. And so if I click on this and I drag it down, notice that I'm making it taller, which makes it bigger, and then I can make it fit in the space also. So that's kind of a neat feature just by itself. But then there's more, because you can change the fill color. So if I wanted this to be like a white color inside, actually let's change it to a black color. And now you can see how it's kind of hard to see, right? So what we can do from there is grab the border color and change that to white. And now you can see there's a white outline around your text. For the longest time, before I realized that word art would do this, I kept looking for an outline feature, because I wanted to put that outline on there to make my text a little bit easier to see, or a drop shadow or something like that. Well, it turns out it was in word art the whole time. And then you can even come over here to the border weight, and you can change how thick that outline is. See how that really pops now? And so just by changing those couple of things, you can make a really sort of impressive looking title. Now there's one other thing I want to show you that you can do with this, because remember, it treats this text almost like an image. So if you click on Format Options, once your word art is clicked on, you can actually add a drop shadow. Now watch this. If I change the distance, you can see that drop shadow pop out from below. And you have a couple of things you can do with it. You can make it more transparent or a little bit bolder. You can change the angle so that it moves to the left or to the right, how far it is under the text, and then the blur radius, which makes it blurrier or a little bit more defined. And then you can also do a reflection too, which makes it kind of like a reflection in a pond, you know? It gives it that effect too. So adding those things with word art can be really useful. All right, so those are your 5. Now, just in case there was one of these that you already knew, I'm going to give you a bonus one. And it has to do with keyboard shortcuts. I am a firm believer in keyboard shortcuts, and I think that they make us the most efficient versions of ourselves when we're using something like Google Drawings. Because if you use your mouse to click around and do everything, it's not nearly as fast as if you use keyboard shortcuts. And you can save yourself seconds on every task that you do in your file, which eventually adds up to minutes, which makes an impact on what we can get done in a day, you know? So check this out. I'm going to highlight all the text. Now, one of my favorite keyboard shortcuts to use in Google Drawings is this. I'm going to hold in Control and Shift. If you're a Mac user, you want to use Command Shift. But Control Shift, and I'm going to start pushing the period key and watch what happens. Period, 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 period. And all of a sudden, my text starts getting bigger. Because you'll notice above the period key, there's that greater than sign. And so that's your cue to remember that if you hold in Control Shift and that greater than sign, it makes your text bigger. If you want to make it smaller, just use the comma key, which is the less than sign. Less, 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 greater, greater, greater. Which is so much easier than coming up here and going, what size do I want to make it? 48? No, that's too big. Let's make it 30. No, that's too small. All you have to do is just use this keyboard shortcut and you can make it exactly the size that you want. So, 5 Google Drawings features you may not have known about. Number 1, the lines you can use to make everything aligned in the same size. Number 2, to add a video to a Google Drawing. Number 3, to add those impressive looking diagrams to make your drawing kind of like an infographic. Number 4, to create a gradient background to add a little touch of flair to your drawing. And then number 5, to make a word art title that really, really sticks out. And of course, your bonus one was the keyboard shortcut to make your text grow. So there you have it. Hope this video was useful to you. If it was, if you'd give it a thumbs up and like it, I'd appreciate that. And then also be sure to subscribe to this channel to see more videos just like this. And I will see you on the next video.